Hello friend, this is Ryan Hicks of the resellermindset.com, and today for this Reseller Friday I want to talk to you about eBay's changes to feedback and how this will affect your business for the positive. Now, I was reading on a forum, people were whining about this. I don't even know why as sellers anybody would complain about this, but resellers tend to be kind of whiny sometimes. But I think most people are seeing the obvious. This is good news. Decades ago when you're on eBay, you got a lot more feedback left by customers because there also was not the issue of sellers not being able to leave negative feedback for the buyers. So sometimes buyers were more prone to leaving positive feedback because they were worried about they might get negative feedback. And that's one of the reasons why eBay took away the ability for sellers to leave negative feedback, because sometimes it kind of kept buyers trapped because they didn't want to leave their real feelings in the feedback because they were worried they might get negative feedback themselves. And obviously over the years, feedback has been diluted where it's not that important of a metric for buyers or sellers, really. Unless your feedback's just terrible, most people really don't care because eBay has buyer protection policies, they have seller protection policies. Everybody's pretty much protected by eBay if they do things in the right way on there. So the feedback really doesn't matter, because if the seller ghosts you and doesn't send you what you paid for, eBay will refund you. No problem, no big deal. And so eBay announced this, their automatic feedback. I'll read this to you. It says, great transactions deserve recognition, and more feedback means more trust from future buyers, as well as greater visibility into seller excellence. But today, only about 1 in 3 buyers chooses to leave feedback. And in my experience, it's way less than that. And in places like Amazon, it's even less than that. Maybe a few percent, 5% maybe leave feedback. On eBay, maybe it's 10, maybe 20%. But of course, that could depend on what you're selling. There might be certain categories of items that the buyers on there are more prone to leaving feedback at a higher percentage. And so it might even out to 1 in 3 buyers or 33% leaving feedback. My experience is that it's nowhere close to that, but eBay knows what's actually going on with their feedback. And so they go on, beginning in September, when a seller in the US uses a tracked service, delivers on time, and no issues are reported, eBay will automatically leave positive feedback for the seller if the buyer hasn't already done so. It is a simple way to ensure sellers' reliability and professionalism are reflected publicly, even when buyers stay quiet. And so you might be wondering, well, how in the world would any seller find anything objectionable in that? Well, because the way it was worded in some other areas was you have to use eBay's shipping. It doesn't say that. It was worded a little poorly in other areas because it says in another area, if a seller ships on time with eBay labels and tracked shipping, and tracking shows the item as delivered after a refund is issued, eBay will reimburse the seller for the item cost and remove any negative or neutral feedback left as a result of delayed delivery. Now, that part was about a different issue, but the part where it says with eBay labels and tracked shipping confuses people. It should say with eBay labels or tracked shipping. The idea is just if you either use our labels or some sort of tracked shipping, because you can't just have no tracking and then prove when you dropped it off, when it was in transit, and if it got lost or delayed in transit, that it wasn't your fault. If you have no tracking, they have no way of knowing. So for me, I think this is obviously a great thing. It'll rocket my feedback up because currently, in my experience, and of course this is very subjective because other people in different categories might have a way better feedback rate as far as percentage of people who actually do leave feedback than I do. But my experience is it's about 10-15% on any given month, maybe 20% on some good months. Most people just do not leave feedback at all. So this will be good because it'll boost people's feedback up. If you have a negative here and there from some nasty person and you can't get them to remove it, even if you refund them, you do everything right and they're still unhappy and eBay's not helping you to get rid of it, this will help a whole lot if you sell a lot of items because it will make that as a negative percentage on your feedback rating dwindle down. And you can have a few negatives if you have enough positive feedbacks. it will still be 100% positive as a percentage. So in my opinion, this is great news. This is a great idea because we should be getting rewarded for all of our positive transactions. The buyer did not have a problem. Everything was shipped and delivered on time. Everything was good. Why shouldn't that result in a positive feedback, even if the customer doesn't want to do it? Now, some people mentioned as a buyer, it might affect because now you won't know if they're really bad sellers or whatever, but I don't think that's the case. If the customer has no problem with the transaction, it was a good transaction, it was shipped on time and delivered on time, that should be a good transaction. That should be helpful information to know, okay, this transaction went smoothly, the customer didn't complain or have a problem with it. That's a good transaction. Why shouldn't I know that information as a buyer? And you could still go in to the feedback and sort by neutral and negative and see what problems people have with the seller and gather your information from there, determine whether you want to buy from them or determine what the seller's issue that they keep running into is. For example, I looked through a seller's feedback and they had a number of negative feedback for slow delivery. Meanwhile, the only things they had for sale were custom items they said all over the place take them 2 weeks to make. So no big deal. But I went to the negatives. I realized the negatives were ridiculous and shouldn't have been, eBay shouldn't have allowed them because they plainly state their item is custom, handmade, and takes 2 weeks to be delivered, to be made and finally delivered. And I actually got mine, I bought something from them and got it earlier than 2 weeks. And I left them positive feedback because it was a good transaction. So positives will help a seller like that who's getting their feedback dwindled down into a negative category, a bad percentage, from buyers that just don't even read what they're buying and don't even pay any attention to what it plainly states, which is not fair to the seller because the buyer is not paying any attention or is mad because they didn't get it faster when it plainly said exactly how long it would take. I buy from sellers all the time that have 95% feedback or maybe even less. I read their feedback sometimes and you'll see, sometimes just they're ship a little slow or whatever, or there's some common issue. Maybe they don't respond. Okay. Well, I don't need a response if I get my product quickly and on time and it's the proper item that I bought. I don't need a response. I don't need to talk to them at all. So I think this is good for eBay. It's good for sellers and it's good for buyers because it gives buyers a little bit better idea of the actual weight of the negative feedbacks compared to the actual sales. You can see, okay, wait, they have this many positive feedbacks from good completed transactions and these few little negatives here and there. It doesn't matter. This is not really a blight on this seller's account. They're a good seller because there's the 99% of people who say they are, even if you have a negative or two in there. And like I said, if you sell enough items, then you can have a few negatives and still have 100% positive feedback. So this is a good thing for sellers, a good thing for buyers, and we need to be happy when things like this happen. This is a blessing, I think, as a seller. Maybe somebody as a buyer could say it's not good. I don't know. But I really believe this is a good thing for buyers and sellers, and especially as a seller, because you know how hard sometimes it can be to get feedback. And especially if you're brand new, it could be a struggle. You could sell 50 items and have a couple feedbacks and just be flailing around trying to get some positive feedback to build your business up. Now, if you have tens of thousands of feedbacks or hundreds of thousands, like some of us more advanced sellers do, it's not going to really matter all that much, but it's still a good thing to have. It's a good way to approach the feedback system. And I think it'll make everybody's businesses better. If you're doing the right things in the right way, you're going to be rewarded for it as you should. My friend, I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.